kinds of things. The Honorable Jason Isaac, founder and CEO of the American Energy Institute. He's here to talk about what's going on with, the California governor who keeps trying to shift the blame for California gas price woes. And I want to talk about something even deeper than that, that there's a group of politicians who continually raise taxes on just about everything, and yet they're going to bring down prices. I don't know how that works. Jason, welcome to the program.
It's great to be on. Thanks for having me, Greg.
Yeah, I think this is, when you have these politicians talking about, now that's the big thing, you elect us, we're going to make things more affordable, and yet simultaneously they're imposing higher taxes, fees, regulations on the various industries that produce these things. There's an economic reality that contradicts their PR, marketing, and policies. So talk about this situation specific to California and gas, and then we'll even maybe talk about it in a more generic way as well.
Yeah, just always be warned when they tell you they're going to make things more affordable. Just kind of find out who that's going to be, because they tend to make things more affordable for themselves because they get wealthier by doing some of the handouts that they like to do. And then they in turn get, kickbacks and good contributions. But California, they have a petroleum market oversight, and they have officially released the list of scapegoats to the high gas prices in California. Right. Now they blame President Trump, they blame Iran, they blame branded gas stations like Chevron, which I think is just laughable. But at no point in time do they look in the mirror and have any reflection of the policies that they put in place. They just raised their fuel taxes on July 1st of this year, something that Governor Newsom could have suspended, but he chose not to. He chose to let gas prices go up. They're averaging near $6 a gallon. It's the highest in the country, save maybe Hawaii, but they continue to do this. We've petitioned the EPA because some of their policies are bleeding across into other states like Oregon and Washington, New Mexico. 11 other states are considering implementing what California's low carbon fuel standards is. And it's only allowed in law in the state of California, but others have done it and they're violating the law. We've petitioned the EPA to get them to rescind this low carbon fuel standards. It adds 25 cents a gallon to the cost of gasoline in California, 18 to 25 cents in New Mexico. I mean, it's one of the poorest states in the country, but yet they're doing these crazy policies that California's done. And then there's the renewable fuel standards that adds 37 cents per gallon. So the $1.40 that the Californians are paying in fuel taxes, then you add on the low carbon fuel standard, the renewable fuel standard, these things that are political agendas. The state is taking in more money than the refiners are. And the refiners are leaving California. They're having to look to import their gasoline from Vietnam, hoping that they can find a refinery to make their special blends that are required in law.
Right. I heard that too, that they can't, we're energy independent now. We're producing, I think we're the number one producer of oil in the world. But they can't use our crude. They actually have to use crude either from the Mideast or, like you were just talking about, from Vietnam. And they won't let people refine in the state, or they're making it, regulating to the point where you can't make any money. I think someone told me that it takes if you build a refinery, now I think it's 25 years before you can actually recoup your investment. Some crazy number like that. And so when you when they do this to the business of bringing products to your home, why don't we hold them accountable? Well, they just say it wasn't us, right? And somehow we let them get away with that.
Yeah, again, the pointing the blame at President Trump and Iran for their own self-inflicted problems is laughable, but it's really sufferable for the people that live in California, the people that are being forced to move to other states. They want to stay in California, but they can't afford to do it, so they're leaving, and that's why during the next census, California is going to lose several more seats. Texas will gain, Florida will gain, Tennessee will gain. These states that embrace free markets are going to be the ones that gain because they're really the ones that are focused on affordability. The left can talk about affordability, but like what's happening in Virginia, they're rejoining the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. That's a European climate political agenda that does nothing to improve the environment. It just makes everything more expensive. And that's a redistribution of wealth. They're taking $13 a month from every ratepayer, and they're going to give it out to low-income people to put solar panels on their roofs. It's not that it help them lower their utility bills. It's just a virtue signal that they're going to put green bling on the roof, which isn't going to last but a few years and won't last one hailstorm.
Yeah, green bling. I love that. See, I think we got to do a better job of labeling. This is one of the things I keep saying. Conservative people, we argue, we come up with facts, and we reason, but they basically just tar and feather you with some kind of outrageous label, and for whatever reason, it hits the heart better than sometimes our arguments do. Here's one that I don't know what we got to label this something. You point out that California earns more per gallon in taxes than refiners can earn producing the gasoline. So the tax collectors are making money. But the actual people providing the service.
More.
Right, well, talk about that. That's crazy, though.
Yeah, it really is. And then they waste it. I mean, they're in massive debt. It's just unreal. And you look at states like Texas, where I live, I mean, we've got a budget surplus every year, and they wind up using that money to cut property taxes to give people back their hard-earned money. The economic opportunities are boundless. In California used to have 40 refineries employing hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of people. They're down to 7 now, and by the end of the year, it's likely they'll be at 5. What do refineries need? They need cheap, affordable, and reliable electricity. And what's China been building? 6 coal power plants a month. China was, for the first time ever, they just stopped this at the start of the Iran conflict. They just stopped doing this, but for the first time ever in China's history, they were exporting diesel, jet fuel, home heating oil onto the global market, because they've massively expanded their refining capacity. They were taking cheap Iranian oil, cheap Venezuelan oil. It's not as cheap for them anymore. So they're paying, the fair market price of oil. And they were exporting that energy. I mean, that's just what this country needs to embrace, is affordable, reliable energy. We produce coal-fired electricity better than any country in the world. We're world leaders in clean air, and we need more of it. I just got done with a presentation to a couple hundred legislators and was talking about, if you want solar, guess what coal is? Coal is stored solar power. It's a battery and solar power all wrapped up into one beautiful black rock. That's solar power right there, and we've got hundreds, if not thousands, of years left of it.
That's right. And okay, and again, trying to put this at a 50,000-foot level, I just said the ancient world, tax collectors were hated. That's one of the reasons why when one of the apostles becomes a believer, it probably was pretty tough, because they said, you were one of the guys that kept taking our money, and now you're talking about the free gift of God's grace in Jesus Christ. Prove Amen. It. Are you authentically repentant or not? Well, why is that? How come the tax collectors get a pass? It's almost like, they're proud. I'm your tax collector. I'm here to come and take all these taxes from you, not provide any services, and yet somehow they're virtue casting. Where did they get that good marketing?
Yeah, I wish I knew, but we need more believers, certainly, especially in blue states, and I pray for that often, that people will find Jesus, because that really helps people kind of come to this realization, like, wait, why am I giving so much money to the government? I would rather provide these services directly to people, or provide money to the food banks, to the churches, and let them be the arbiters of social services, because they would do it out of kindness and out of their heart, not as a means to make a profit in excessive revenue. And that's unfortunately what's happened with government, is this government looks at it, and the bureaucrats look at it as a way that, hey, I've got this job taking money from other people, and now I get to give it out to my friends, and maybe those friends will offer me, another job, or maybe they'll hire family or friends, or kick back to political campaigns. It's just we've gone in the wrong direction on that front, and hopefully there'll be a course correction.
Yeah, and from my point of view, and you're the business guy, you're the energy guy, that's why we're talking to you about these energy issues, but I call that benevolent government, and I say that it's the greatest heresy of our time, because the Bible says government's coercive, put your sword away when it comes to doing Jesus stuff. Charity is freely give, freely receive. That's charity. You got to keep those things differentiated, or you get the kind of corruption you just talked about, when government folks take money from you and give it away to others. All right, let's get back to this. This is a simple, also, misunderstanding of how economics works, right?
Oh, absolutely right. It certainly is. I mean, you look at what's happened is the coercion that we're experiencing, the money that's being taken away from us. And I remind people that your money is your private property. And this country, I believe, was founded on private property rights, the ability to own land, and to do stuff with that land. And it was Ronald Reagan that, was talking about private property rights and people complaining about what their neighbors were doing and destroying their views. And he says, if you like the view, buy it. Yeah, and that's just a testament to our private property rights, and I agree with that. And when people take your money, or when they misuse your money, or when companies abandon their fiduciary duty with investments that you've made in those companies, they're essentially stealing your private property. And I would hope that the listeners would take that into consideration when they're making investments into companies, and when they're spending money, and certainly when they're paying taxes with their money. Things like regional greenhouse gas initiatives in Virginia, things like massive fuel taxes in California, they're unjust. They're not doing what their intended purposes were. They're just making life harder for the least among us.
I love what you just said. They're unjust. And see, we don't talk that way. And we try to, we understand that good government and economics is not a perfect way. Sometimes it's the lesser of two evils, or sometimes it's a little bit better than something else. But we try to be honest about those things. But we also got to call things the way they are. And what you just did is calling something that's out of whack or taking what's not theirs. And it's got to be called out for that, rather than just, it's our policy and it seems to work, and we'll call it something like the Green Initiative when it's really anything but. Well, listen, folks, first part, this is understanding that government can simply legislate affordability. It cannot. And so we're going to come back and talk about the fact that markets don't vote, they don't watch campaign ads, and they certainly don't respond to press releases. They respond to incentives. And when government can change those incentives, consumers eventually see the beneficial results. We're going to talk about that and more with Honorable Jason Isaac, founder and CEO of the American Energy Institute, right after this. That's what this program's all about. We're talking with Jason Isaac, founder and CEO of the American Energy Institute. And in this segment, talk a little bit about supply, energy independence, and the negative price of policy, especially using California as an example. Jason, your article walks through refinery closures, declining in-state production, restrictions on drilling, lawsuits against energy companies in California, like you called it, California's boutique fuel requirements. Talk again about how these policies combine to reduce supply, increase prices, and this was all predictable and very unhelpful and destructive to the average citizens. And that's how we should be talking through this, shouldn't we?
Yeah, we really should. California used to be the third largest producer of oil and gas in the country. They've had just a litany of litigation and lawsuits and laws passed against producing energy in that state. They used to have 40 refineries. Now they're down to 7. They would actually refine their own oil. And now today they produce like 0.3% of our nation's oil and gas. I mean, it's appalling how low just of the U.S. share. They import 40% of their imports come between a mix from Brazil and Iraq. So they're getting oil from the Middle East. So that the issues in the Strait of Hormuz directly affect their supply where it's not in other states. California is really experiencing what Europe's experiencing. A lot of Europe's energy, because of their policies against the production of oil and gas, they're dependent on that Middle East oil and gas that flows through the Strait of Hormuz. I think it's over 50% of the energy that independence from the EU flows through the Strait of Hormuz. And so they're experiencing much higher costs. And look, I think it was maybe it was yesterday, the Attorney General for the state of California sued the federal government because they're utilizing the Defense Production Act to increase production of offshore oil. This is the most responsibly produced oil in the world, and California is actually suing the federal government to stop the production of something that's going to benefit the tax rolls for the state of California. I mean, this is going to lead to massive economic development in the state, and they're suing to stop it. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, and this is we lived in California for 11 years, and we have friends. We were just back there for a wedding, and I keep saying, across the board, how come you guys are voting? It's almost like you're trying to destroy your own state by the way you vote for these things. We haven't even talked about the fact that haven't they shut down all the nuclear power plants and things like that, and yet they want everything to be electric. And the grids are failing, and I've been there when the grids have failed, and life gets really nasty in these big cities when all the lights go off, And so you're asking, well, how can you do all these things when you are actually making yourself dependent on things that really aren't going to be there for you when you need it. Talk also about the fact that being reliant on foreign energy makes them vulnerable, not just to geopolitical events, but also it makes their state vulnerable. It makes us vulnerable to the geopolitics of the world as well, right?
Yeah, policies in California have led to the closure of a coal-fired power plant in Arizona on the Navajo Nation that was providing affordable, reliable electricity to Californians, but they banned the use of that electricity. So you talk about hundreds of Navajo that are out of jobs. There was mining of the coal. There was the production of the electricity utilizing the coal. There was the maintenance of the pollution control technology. I mean, all these things were providing incredible jobs for the Navajo Nation, and California's policy essentially shut that down. There are still times when they have to import electricity from other states, and there have been lawsuits about that because they're part of a regional transmission organization, a regional grid. And so California people are electing people that are forcing the implementation of wind and solar in California. But then from time to time, they've got to buy electricity. It's quite often from their neighboring states. And so the people that live in those neighboring states are paying higher costs for electricity because of people elected in California. And they didn't vote for those people in California. And so it's really appalling. And that's what happens when you become dependent on other states and other countries for your energy. You're subject to their whims, and you're subject to the cost of like a geopolitical event happening that's going to drive up costs that they're seeing now. And again, wanting to go to Vietnam to import their boutique fuel because they don't have the refineries, because the refineries can't do business because those refineries need cheap electricity. That's a thing of the past in California. And so they're shutting down. I mean, and it's alarming that we're losing refining capacity in the United States. The first new refinery in 50 years is being built in South Texas. I think it's called America First Refinery. That's an incredible thing that we need to have happen. We need more of that so we can export more goods on the global market and help our friends and allies around the world, but also to contribute to our tax base.
Well, and you know, when he blames his litany of people he blames, tell our people, I mean, there's temporary external shocks, yeah, and so you can argue about are we getting our money for what we're doing in Iran? Is this a good thing because it is driving gasoline prices up a bit? Although they're still nowhere near where it was under Joe Biden, and nothing was happening geopolitically when it was up that high. But talk about that, the difference between something like that, which long term could actually be really good for us. Versus the long-term policy decisions that California is making that are going to drive prices up forever.
Yeah, let's hope it just leads to stability in the Middle East for the first time in ever. Just look at what's happening. I mean, the prices of oil are back up a little bit, but they're nowhere near where they were, like you said, during the Biden administration. They're nowhere where they were like 6 to 8 weeks ago. We've absorbed this. America is producing more oil. We're setting records for oil production. And that's great. So we're exporting more of our energy. We're producing more than we can use. Yes, we still have to import some because our refineries are geared for a heavier crude oil than what we generally produce in the Permian Basin in Texas or in North Dakota or in Oklahoma. So we export that lighter sweet crude to other countries. It's going to Mexico to be refined. Our LNG exports, our production of natural gas is incredible. We're setting records on that front. But there's a huge demand for liquefied natural gas, which gets shipped across in tankers across the ocean into Europe and India. They regasify it, put it in their lines, and people use it for industry. They use it to heat and cool their homes. Well, maybe not cool in Europe, but certainly to heat their homes in the winter. They haven't given up, I don't think, on heat in Europe. They've certainly given up on air conditioning.
That's right.
Which just completely blows my mind that it's almost frowned upon. You have to get a permit in the United Kingdom to get an air conditioner in your house. And this is the solution. It's certainly getting warmer in cities because of asphalt and concrete. I mean, it's the urban heat island effect. We're not setting any global temperature records that in hundreds of years. It's been much hotter. And how do you mitigate that? You get air conditioning. In the winter, you don't freeze to death because you have heat, you have fire. But in Europe, air conditioning is just frowned upon. And now the climate alarmist policies have resulted in 175,000 heat-related deaths because people don't have air conditioning. They build hospitals without air conditioning except in the surgery rooms. I mean, that must be absolutely miserable. It's bad enough having to go to the hospital. But gosh, no one would come and visit you if there's no air conditioning. I just couldn't imagine that. That's one thing I loved about the World Cup is bringing people over here and seeing how great the United States is, the economic prosperity we have. We're world leaders in clean air. We're number one when it comes to access to clean and safe drinking water. And I think social media just really turned the mainstream media on its head, because people were making videos just talking about how great things are here in the United States. So I hope that boosts morale for the people that actually live here and take a lot of that for granted.
Yeah, so quit letting them virtue cast, folks, because it's really bad policy and they're making money off it, and it's not helping citizens. And like you just said, our technology is creating clean air, clean water, and great opportunity. Let's not let them use Luddite views of policy, which is not helping anybody but themselves. Great conversation, Jason. Where can people go to read more about you? Because you gave us a ton to think about. We've got to keep investigating.
Yeah, go to AmericanEnergyInstitute.com, or you can find me on X, formerly Twitter, at Isaac for Energy.
As always, great to talk to you. Take care, my friend.
It's great to be on. Thanks for having me. God bless.
All right. God bless you too.